We're joined now by Sven Simon, who is a member of the CDU from Germany, but he's also an MEP at the Trade Committee of the European Parliament. And Sven, before we move into trade, I want to ask you about the rollout of the vaccination. You know, in Germany, I know you mentioned all the time you need more doses, that this needs to be faster. Are you more optimistic now that Germany can hit the targets for itself?
Yes, as you mentioned before, until the end of the summer, there should be an offer for every citizen. I still trust in those figures, and the companies now have to fulfill the contracts. That's clear.
And, you know, just on a general picture, which again is also connected to vaccination, is more stimulus, more money that could be coming into the German economy. There has been many reports, ourselves we've reported, that perhaps we're looking at 50 billion euros in extra money for the German economy. Would you say at this stage you still need that money? This is an economy that needs to be stimulated to that extent. We're talking billions?
Well, Germany has done a lot to support the economies during the crisis. The federal government alone has spent an unprecedented 440 billion euros in 2020, increasing our national debt by over 100 billion. Additionally, you have stimulus packages from state governments, from municipalities, and now, of course, the Next Generation EU program from Brussels. My concern is not so much the money and the amount of money. It's not so much the overall available funding, but the transmission of state aid into the real economy. We have seen weeks of delays in business receiving the aid that they applied for. And this is something that federal government needs to work on urgently now. So it's not so much the amount of money, but more the transmission of state aid into the real economy.
And Germany, just to pick up on that, Germany has a huge state aid program for the European Union. In fact, it's the biggest one in the EU. But I guess you're saying that you're concerned about the transmission. Have you had any feedback from companies that this is not coming in fast enough?
Yes, there was a feedback about a delay from November onwards, and I think the federal government now needs to work on that urgently, but this is what they do.
Right, and Mr. Simon, the other big question when it comes to Germany, of course, is trade. We've seen that manufacturing is holding up well, but the problem here, of course, is the service industry because of the lockdown. One key country there is China. You have benefited massively from this relationship, but the European Union now says it needs to be much more balanced and recalibrated in that sense. So how are you going to do the two? I mean, continue to do business with China, but at the same time hold them accountable?
Yeah, that is true. It's indeed a problem. China is the EU's most important trading partner in goods, but so is the EU for China. This relationship is reciprocally important, but there is too little regulatory reciprocity today. The China-EU Investment Agreement, or K for short, is an attempt to remedy exactly that. But it will only work under two conditions. First, the European Union needs to ramp up its trade defense instruments. Chinese commitments need to be unilaterally enforceable for the European Union. And second, China is a poor track record of compliance in agreements with European partners. I would like to see Beijing, and this is, I think, the general view in the European Parliament, undertake meaningful steps on intellectual property protection or the Sino-British Declaration on Hong Kong before the China-EU investment agreement can be ratified.
Okay, and you make a good point there because China has taken aggressive action on the foreign matters, has also taken aggressive action and not meeting some of those targets. So is this something that the German government accepts, the Angela Merkel administration, that they concede that to some extent the Chinese are not complying with that?
Well, it is very problematic. Not only that, there are other different difficult topics with China, but it's always a question of reciprocity. And I think the only thing we can do is, when trading with each other, try to, well, bring our trade partners to fulfill their obligations and the agreements we have negotiated.
And Mr. Simon, just a final question on Brexit, because the deal at a political level was agreed before Christmas, but it still needs to be ratified by the European Union and the European Parliament. And it does seem that we're headed for another delay, now a vote scheduled for April. You say that's a bad idea. Why?
Well, the European Parliament is ready to give its consent to the agreement. The European People's Party's spokesman on Brexit affairs, David McAllister, has stressed that yesterday. So let's get it over with and ratify the deal at the plenary session in March. We wasted so much time with the deal. There are more pressing issues than Brexit that we should focus on that moment now. Some of these things we have discussed today, so let's get it done.
Okay, just very quickly, is there any chance, I guess that's my question, that this vote could be now moved to March just to get it done, as you say, just move on from this?
Well, there is a chance that the vote can move to March, but my impression is, since the United Kingdom agreed yesterday to postpone it to April, that it will be April then in the end.